Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll touch on all the home teams, the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, the LSU Tigers, and we hope to get to the Tulane Green Wave. Got a great panel for you tonight. A guy that, again, he covers it all. Jude Young from SportsNola.com and 990 AM WGSO, and we'll be joined shortly by Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News. Jude, welcome to the show. Thanks as always for your time. Always love when you come on the program. And tell us a little bit about what's going on at Sports Nola and, of course, your radio show, and, of course, what you're doing out with the Privateers as well.
I appreciate you having me back, Eric. And, yes, UNO basketball's coming up, but my main gig is SportsNola.com, webmaster and editor there, and we try to cover anything and everything. And this is our busy time of year, and I think you'll find our high school sports coverage more than just word of mouth. You know that we are going to cover games and give you live games and analysis better than pretty much anybody in the state, and we're very proud of that. And as you mentioned, my radio show Tuesday and Wednesday nights from 6 to 7 p.m. on WGSO 990 AM, The Jude Young Show, and talking about all of these great topics that we cover at Sports Nola. And finally, UNO basketball starting up, college basketball season, middle of next month, November 14th against Bowling Green on the road, and I'll be the voice of the Privateers again this season, and looking forward to seeing what Mark Schlesinger and company can do another year removed from starting over in the Southland Conference and a chance to compete this year.
Yeah, I had Coach Schless on the radio show the other day. He feels really good about this upcoming team.
He really should, because you have a slew of players who are now going into their third year, guys that had to play significant minutes as freshmen, and now we see a club that's ready to come together with another very good freshman class that I think is comparable to that one from 2 years ago. They needed shooting. They may have gotten that, and when you're a mid-major, finding size is hard. Yes. You better be able to guard people and shoot the basketball, and I think that UNO is ready to take a step forward in what is an underrated conference in basketball. Stephen F. Austin, Northwestern State, two fantastic programs, and we're hoping that UNO can put their name in that group.
Yeah, that would be really good. We'd love to see the Privateers come back. We'll touch the Saints. We'll talk obviously LSU as well. That's going to happen just a little while. But we'll start with the New Orleans Pelicans, because again, Jude covers it all. Pelicans decided not to go outside of the organization, upgrade the roster. Instead, they banked on Alvin Gentry's system and having another year of Anthony Davis, and also praying that they would be healthy. 7 guys right now, 7 guys that you're counting on, your core is injured right now as they limp through the preseason. And I'm guessing the majority of those will not be available as they open up against Golden State next Tuesday.
It's really rough for the Pels, because even national outlets are starting to question what's going on with strength and conditioning down in New Orleans. Do they have that bad of luck? The reality is they do have, in a lot of ways, very bad luck. If you think back to Drew Holiday, who's on a minutes restriction, we're told, for at least the first couple months of the season, he was damaged goods. We know that now. Eric Gordon, no sooner had you acquired him in the Chris Paul trade, the key piece, he has a serious knee injury. That can happen at any time. And then you go on to other players having nagging injuries on top of remembering Ryan Anderson 2 seasons ago. It's not the Pelicans' fault, anybody on the staff's fault, that the guy landed on his head and nearly broke his neck, and could have been a much worse injury affecting his life. But he looks at least to be healthy and coming back into form. It's rough. Tyreek Evans is out 6 to 8 weeks, apparently. Wow. The latest problem. I don't know what to tell you, except I feel like Alvin Gentry can make the personnel go the way Dell Demps as GM wants it to go, but he's going to have to piece together a team early on with guys that weren't even on the roster, guys they had to find on the cheap. Nate Robinson may be playing heavy minutes. He was unemployed 2 weeks ago.
Bull McCaleb, bringing him over from Europe. Great New Orleans name, obviously what he did with the Privateers. But the guy's made his bones in Europe.
That's true.
You know, I've never done it on the NBA level, and all of a sudden you're counting on Robinson and McCaleb to be one of your key pieces in the offense, especially on at the guard position. And then Kendrick Perkins, a guy that has been lost and forgotten in the NBA. All of a sudden now, he's your starting center.
Right, let's go to the injury issues there in the post and how you can't blame the staff. They've tried to prepare for this up-tempo that was going to happen from the very first practice. They said, we're going to get up and down the floor. We're going to have a shortened shot clock in practice. We're going to go, go, go. And two big guys, two 7-footers, weren't ready for it. That's why those injuries happen. I think that's safe to say. And they tried to tell these guys to prepare during the offseason. Amir Seek got out of international duty with Turkey as a result, but it still didn't matter. They weren't ready for a completely different style than either one of them had played in their career. So that just adds to the problems, because Perkins is a guy they wanted to play 5 to 10 minutes a game and have more of an effect in the locker room and on the psyche of the team than actually play big minutes.
Alexis Agenza out 4 to 6 weeks with a hamstring. Ashik out with a strained calf 2 to 3 weeks. So both guys, even if healthy, when you talk about this up-tempo offense, they may be literally limping into the lineup here. You mentioned Tyreke Evans' second surgery on his knee since May, and it's just mind-boggling. We've questioned the medical staff with the New Orleans Saints. We know they share that medical staff with the New Orleans Pelicans, and at some point you just got to question and say, man, what the heck's going on over there?
You certainly hope that it is a string of bad luck that will end sooner than later. When you talk about knee injuries, though, in the NBA, once you have one, you're susceptible. It is what it is. Derrick Rose's career has been almost entirely derailed from an MVP level with the Bulls as a result. It happens. But the one name we haven't mentioned yet, we have to talk about Anthony Davis. Because as you know, Eric, now they're going to have to ride him even more than they were planning, but it looks like he's up to the task. He's draining three-pointers at an elite level now. He hadn't done that before. Practiced during the offseason, doing it in the preseason. The offense will go heavily through him when the Pelicans are forced to slow down, and it may be in their best interest, if they're that thin in numbers, to say, okay, we'll take our time and we'll ride number 23 as far as he can take us.
Jude, I 100% agree with you. The only one thing that I'll question, and look, it's too early to question. I've seen, I think I've seen one preseason game at this point. But again, one of the things we're hearing is he's going to be a little bit more on the outside defensively, a little bit more on the edge. Man, look, this is a guy that led the NBA in blocks. He is a guy that changes shots on the inside. I'm not sure how Gentry wants to utilize him, if they're going to allow him to continue to maybe, go ahead and peek a little bit outside. I would have him in the paint as much as I could, because he will change shots.
There are some concepts on both sides of the ball that it looks like they want to take advantage of the mobility, the length of Davis. When you talk about defense, it makes sense to me that if you play him in the right spots away from the ball, as an off-ball defender and shot blocker, versus having him take the beating inside, where he's more likely to get into foul trouble as well. Having him fly in like a condor and make plays helps, and that on the flip side may benefit both Davis and Ryan Anderson as offensive rebounders, playing more on the perimeter, following shots. They want their guards to attack the basket, and they want their bigs, one of their greatest strengths, both of those guys, to come in and clean up the messes.
No, I definitely agree. When you look at this team right now, the front end of the schedule, very, very tough. You really would like to have your full complement of players, because you don't want to get too far in the hole. You're hoping that they can play hopefully 500 ball until they get everybody back, but that's asking a lot of guys that we're basically bringing in off the street.
It will show just how good of a coach Gentry is right away. And he was a guy who usually had good point guard play as a head coach in the past to make his up-tempo system work. Even then, he didn't have a great overall record. If the team was shorthanded, the record suffers. It's the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. And you mentioned Robinson right away. Nate Robinson's going to have to play a key role for this team. If Drew Holiday's only going to play up to 20 minutes a game on average, Robinson's going to have to play heavy minutes. At least the system fits him, and it looks like so far in preseason he's excited about his opportunity and may be able to be that high-volume scorer that can help replace what Evans would have brought to you as a guy who attacks the rim.
Darren Erman is brought in to be able to play, to again teach defense, teach defensive concepts, to make this a better defensive team. The problem is that when you look at just the lineup of the guys they brought back, not really good defensive players. It'll be interesting to see how he can kind of whip those guys into shape, because I think a lot of people forget Golden State, up-tempo, scores a lot, but one of the better defensive teams in the NBA.
It absolutely hurts to not have those two bigs, Ajinça and Asik, available at least perhaps for a couple weeks. Maybe they'll be both ready by then, we'll see, because to simplify your defensive schemes, you still have to have bigs that can stay in front of people. If Anthony Davis is going to be an impact player as a shot blocker, you've got to at least have somebody slow people down. Yes. If they can't do that, if they're playing with guards they just grabbed off the street that you're expecting to play at a high level on the ball in the NBA, you're asking a lot. But Erman at least understood when he came in that he had to simplify the concepts for this team and make sure they didn't have the defensive blunders. Too many layups given up by a club that has that kind of shot blocker.
Agreed.
And they want to make sure just to try to keep people in front of them and give themselves an opportunity to take advantage of what should be a pretty good rebounding club.
It's hard to really judge because, again, we haven't seen this group together, especially with, again, such the new additions by way of, again, because of injury. Do you think they could tread water in the first part of the year till they get healthy?
It's awfully tough. You're going to see if Anthony Davis is ready to take that step to bona fide superstar. People have voted. Now the GMs in the league say that he'll finish second to LeBron James in the MVP voting, If he's that good and he's the type of guy that maybe for the first month has to score 35 points a game and have a Michael Jordan type scoring impact and on top of everything he does, that will take them a long way. But how do you piece together the offense otherwise? Ryan Anderson needs to play well. He needs to be involved in the second unit in the first half of games, and they're going to go small at the end of games. They're going to have to play Davis at the 5, and Rhino's going to have to be out there at the 4 and prove that he can play both ways.
Well, you do like what he's done. Off-season, lost some weight, got stronger. He's in the best shape I've seen of his career, really, in the NBA. We know he can shoot the basketball at this point, and we know he's a willing defender. So it'll be interesting to see, again, how they move forward on this. Again, look, the city's excited. 15,000 season tickets sold. You know, I made the statement that I haven't seen the city this excited about basketball since Maravich played here. And I mean, you know, again, people say, wait a minute. Well, when Paul and West and Chandler were here and it was the year back from Oklahoma City, people were excited. Yeah, but people were really excited when the Jazz and Maravich was here. And I sense the same excitement today.
Davis and the message, it worked, didn't it? We talked on this show, you and I, about what can they do if they replace Monty Williams? Can they have an exciting hire that'll get the job done? If we'd have thrown Gentry's name out there at the time, it wouldn't have excited people until the message and the plans of how they were going to play were fully absorbed. And what we see is a team that's going to try to run and have the most shots per 48 minutes if possible in the league. So they're not going to be boring. And yes, Anthony Davis keeps getting better. So at least the product will be entertaining, but how long the fan interest really stays at a peak if they're losing, it's a completely different story,
There's no doubt about that. But this system fits Davis to a T.
Right.
Again, when you got him, if you can get him again in the fast break offense, that's fine. If you set up, obviously lengthening his ability to be able to shoot the ball outside is going to help him. We know he's a terror inside.
And we hope it keeps him healthier too, playing away from the basket on both ends more. His ability to shoot will open up so many things for anybody on the roster who can get the job done off the bounce. And fortunately, they have a slew of those guys, or potentially, if they're healthy, when Evans is finally back and if he can stay at 100%, he is going to thrive because his problem is getting to the rim and not finishing as well as somebody who takes it to the hole as much as any guard in the league. Maybe now the traffic will be cleared out enough for him to be better at that.
Well, let's hope, and let's cross our fingers, hoping this team can get healthy, no doubt. Jude Young is our guest. Glenn Guilbeau to join us in just a couple of minutes. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Don't move.
Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. Now, we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red state. Blue state. Vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live.
our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give. advocate, volunteer, Live United. Sign up at liveunited.org.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Cox Channel 14, Charter Channel 11 and 711, AT&T Channel 32 and 1032, Dish TV, DirecTV, and over-the-air broadcast on Channel 32.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
Hi, we're Ola High, and you're watching WLAE TV.
In the search for beautiful people, music that moves, and real culture, America, there's only one LA Coast. Go Coast, Louisiana delivers the treasures of the Gulf, fresh to you.
I think we need a bigger boat.
Sundays at 8:30 p.m. on LAE.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. WLAE is currently looking for partners to underwrite this program and other programs on our station. Underwriting on WLAE is affordable, brings exposure to your cause or company, and helps support our nonprofit mission of providing television programs that educate, inform, and inspire the viewers of Greater New Orleans and Southeast Louisiana. If you are interested in learning about program underwriting on WLAE, please contact us at 504-830-3703.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching tonight here on WLAE. Remember, each and every Friday night, there's a rebroadcast of this program, Pelican Sports Television in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets at 9 p.m. and at 10 p.m. right back here on WLAE. Jude Young of SportsNorth.com and 990 AM WGSO is one of our guests. And now Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News joins us on the program. Glenn, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us.
Sure.
And tell the folks a little bit about your beat over at Gannett and, of course, what's going on with that publication as well.
Well, I cover LSU for the Gannett papers in Louisiana, Shreveport, Lafayette, Alexandria, Monroe. Also, WWL-TV is with Gannett now, so on their website. And then a lot of my Leonard Fournette stories lately have been in USA Today and usatoday.com. So it's been an interesting year, and it's going to keep going with basketball as well.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Leonard Fournette. Obviously, you look at the basketball team right now with the great recruits that they brought in. Ben Simmons obviously leading the group there. Baseball. I had someone tell me today that they've got the top golfer in the nation that's at LSU now. It's amazing, again, having all these number one recruits that now have taken a presence up in Baton Rouge.
Right, and it's probably never happened where you got three at the same time. Alex Lang, could be the best pitcher in college baseball this coming season. Ben Simmons already the player of the year in the SEC before he's played. If Fournette wins the Heisman, Ben Simmons National Player of the Year. I mean, they've really, the only thing close ahead was when they had Ben McDonald, Chris Jackson, and Tommy Hotson at the same time. So this will probably be more than that.
We'll get back to LSU in a moment. Let's talk about the Saints. A much-needed win against the hated Falcons, 31-21. I didn't think it was possible. I'll be honest with you. I thought it would be a Falcon beatdown. It was, but it was the Saints beating down the Falcons, 31-21. They're now 2-4. The one thing that stuck out to me, guys, was an aggressive game plan. Something we have not seen from Sean Payton this season. Whether it was offense, defense, special teams, they really took it to the Falcons. Jude, your thoughts on the game plan, which again created 3 turnovers. They only had 3 penalties for 15 yards, which again, for this young team is almost unheard of. Your thoughts on the game, and then we'll get into whether they maybe turn the corner a little bit here.
I think the first point that you have to take into account is timing is everything. Playing the Falcons on the short week, the Saints haven't had the benefit of being the home team in these Thursday night games. They had to go to Atlanta in that spot, and I think they caught the Falcons at the right time. They were coming off a tough overtime game against Washington where they hadn't played well, and a team that shouldn't be undefeated, that's played well, and the schedule's treated them kindly. New coach bounce with Dan Quinn was helping as well. It all played into the Saints looking for a big win against a rival and to try to keep their season going. But speaking of a new head coach who brought his schemes from the Seattle Seahawks as defensive coordinator over to Atlanta, I think the Saints started to figure out the Seahawks and how to attack that style defense, and Atlanta doesn't have as good a football players. And that's why we saw the tight ends, particularly Ben Watson, have a great game. A lot of zones. The Falcons don't rush the passer like the Seahawks have, and even Seattle's struggling in that area. They wouldn't be 2-4. So it worked out that Breeze was on his game, and the Saints were able to not have to worry so much about a wide receiver core that if you attack and man them up a little bit more, they may not be able to get open on a regular basis. But the zones, when Breeze is on, he's going to pick you apart, and we saw a perfect example of that in the Dome.
It's like basketball. It was just a good matchup for the Saints, especially the part about Atlanta not having a great pass rush, because that's how you beat the Saints. But I remember when Sean Payton first came to the Saints, Archie Manning raving about how good a play caller he was. And that was one of his best play calling games, I thought. The little jump pass to Ben Watson was just wide open, and you knew he had it because he was going for it on 4th and really long. I mean, it wasn't 4th and 1. And Ben Watson had a career night. Sean has limited playmakers this year, so for him to get that kind of offense with those players, I thought was very impressive. But I don't know how much they can keep that going because other teams have good pass rushes, and really their 2 wins are at night in the Dome against 2 teams they usually get up for. So they need to win this road game coming up Sunday or something like it to get closer to 500.
I definitely agree. We saw Breeze a lot with the bootleg. Now, again, Tony Hills comes in for Pete, who was in for Armstead.
Right.
You wanted to get away from that left side if you could. He was effective when it came to the bootleg, and I've wondered out loud all week long on the radio show if that's something that I'm going to try to utilize going forward.
Well, we know that Sean Payton's going to change up what he does based on the opponent, and different game plans will dictate different ways to attack. We'll see if they do that more, though, Eric, because you're right. It was effective, and if you're having trouble protecting the quarterback, the best way to deal with that is to move him around a bit more, and Breeze looked comfortable doing it. That said, this week, Colts struggle to rush the passer. I don't know how this particular attack is going to be as far as what Payton's thinking, but I do know one thing. They're going to have to find a way to run the ball because they're not at night, at home, against a rival with a fired-up fan base. They're on the road, and they absolutely need more balance. They didn't even run the ball very well against the Falcons. That's not going to cut it this week against a Colts team that really needs a victory for momentum and to shake off the issues with a bad call and a head coach that's under siege.
Glenn?
And, the bootleg with Breeze really makes you wonder why they haven't used that more over the years.
Really?
But they were really successful without using it. But he's always been a good athlete and very good feet. And he's moving his feet as soon as he gets back in the pocket the last couple of years because the protection's been so bad. So that's a natural for him, the bootleg and some sprint outs too. So, you got to hand it to Sean Payton for that, and he's going to need to keep doing that if they're going to get up around 500 this season.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned Ben Watson, 10 catches, 127 yards, a touchdown, career day for him. Again, Colston has been up and down this season, again, kind of showing his age. It was interesting that, again, that they utilized him a lot like what I thought they've utilized Colston. Now, some of the guys I had on this week said that they kind of utilized him more like they utilized Graham in the past, but it was good to see another weapon out there. One of the things that we haven't seen, guys, is C.J. Spiller emerging in this offense. Another week goes by, another week where they get 7 touches. They've got to do something to put the most dynamic playmaker that they have on the field more involved in this game plan. And to me, that's the most mind-boggling thing about this because in the past, whether it be Sproles or Bush, Payton has had a plan, a way to be able to dictate where the defensive safety was going to be, where the linebacker was going to be, moving them out wide, bring them out the backfield. We haven't seen that this season with Spiller.
And you talk about both Sproles and Bush. It wasn't an automatic when they were on the field that the Saints were going to throw the ball. It pretty much is so far from what we've seen from Spiller. Now, we don't know exactly how he may still be affected by injury, and if that's why they're continuing to limit his snaps, despite the big play, obviously, against Atlanta to win the game. He showed his straightaway speed there, but it was also a blown coverage by a linebacker, so he didn't have to do a lot. You'd like to see him run the football, maybe even more so than the previous third down in space type backs that we've mentioned, because he actually does have the size and the ability, when you look back at what he did at Buffalo, to be a threat there, to break tackles, and to give you that ability to be able to not be so predictable when it comes to whether you're going to run or throw the football. Ingram's had a great deal of success catching the ball this year, but he's not going to do a lot with it. If there was more confusion with Spiller in the game, seeing more snaps, and carrying it just enough to keep defenses honest, that's another wrinkle that I hope to see, assuming that Spiller's capable health-wise to do it.
Has it surprised you, Glenn, they haven't utilized him more?
Well, maybe they're saving him, keeping him in the hip pocket. But I remember late in Darren Sproles' career with the Saints, there were some games like, why didn't they get the ball to him? Especially, I mean, he was so great in 2011, and they still had Graham late in Sproles' career. So it's kind of mystifying sometimes the way he uses his back. And as good as Pierre Thomas was, there were games where you didn't see him much. So it must be something the defense is doing, and maybe just didn't get in the game plan that week. But they definitely need to use him, because Ingram, he's okay, but he's not a threat.
Right. Glenn, how big, in your mind, the Michael Marty block punt, recovery, touchdown, and how ironic to happen on a night where Steve Gleason's in the stadium. It's against the Falcons. I mean, it's almost a repeat of what happened in 06.
And it was Mardi Gras was what it was.
There you go.
And
we're going to coin that one from now on. That's a good one.
I tweeted that, and the Advocate stole it for the headline. So
there you go. Beautiful.
The lawsuits are coming.
It's coming.
But and that's the first ever father-son combination of a touchdown with the Saints, unless you count Archie Manning and Peyton Manning's interception in the quarter.
There you go.
I know some Colt fans got upset with that one. But no, that was just an awesome night. And Gleason's right there, and he winked to the camera. It was almost too good to be true. And it was against the Falcons, and then they blew them out. You know, so. It was a special night. You hope it wasn't just a salute to the past, and hopefully it is a sign that they can still be a decent team this year.
Yeah, well, both these guys obviously come from New Orleans. Glenn is a Rummel Raider grad. We won't hold that against him, though. But your
only
thoughts,
team that stopped Fournette.
There you go.
That's a good point. I think it's important to note that it was a big special teams play. This team has actually had a couple of those this year. Marcus Murphy with the big kick return against Carolina that helped keep the Saints without Breeze in that game. So it would be great to see the special teams become more and more of a factor. Certainly hope Kyle Forbath has to, he has to straighten out the kicking game, because if this team wants to stay in it with the stretch before the bye of 4 games that are winnable football games, really the whole schedule is games that Saints can win if they play close to their best or at their best. They're going to have to be solid in all 3 phases of the game. We haven't even talked about defense yet, and how there was a pass rush finally. That made a huge difference. They got contributions in all 3 phases of the game, and you'll beat a lot of people that way.
The Forbath signing is just mind-boggling. When again, you had Dustin Hopkins in camp. You go with Hocker. Hopkins goes to Washington. He replaces Forbath, and he is playing very well over there. He's kicking the ball well. Now you're in a situation where you cut Hopkins, you got Forbath, and you're hoping, obviously, that he's going to be able to nail field goals. But he doesn't have the distance, which was something they were looking for this season. They were looking for a guy to kick out over 50 yards, and they're not going to get this with Kai Forbath.
Well, Peyton has been changing kickers so much the last 2 years. I don't see why he doesn't do that with receivers. Because they obviously a
Stay
need
tuned.
there.
It's coming. But it'll be interesting to see what goes on. Let's head to the phone lines. 866-3200. Great panel for you tonight. Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News. Also Jude Young of SportsJournal.com and 990 AM WGSO. Tahoma and Greg. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg, you with us?
Hello?
Hey, Greg, how you doing? Greg, you're on the air.
Oh, man. Hello?
Yeah, we got Greg. You're on the air. All right, let's put him on hold. We'll come back to him. James is in Franklinton. James, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans.
Hey, guys.
Hey, James.
Great to be on the show. Eric, I was just going to go ahead and ask you, did you think that it was a good hire, or the panel think it was a good hire to get Alvin Gentry instead of going after Jeff Van Gundy, who is one of the analysts for ESPN or Turner. And maybe that the style of play is contributing to all the injuries that they have. And I also going to say one thing before I turn it over to you guys. I think that people don't understand that what Golden State did was the first time a team had run and gun for close to 20 years and won the NBA title. So it's not like, you know, LeBron and Miami did something that was not expected when they won the title and controlled the NBA for 4 years. So I'm going to hang up and listen to you guys. I really want to know what you all think.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it. You know, I was in favor of Van Gundy. I thought it would be more of a splash hire. Obviously, Gentry's he moved up in the rankings of coaches that were available after Golden State is making their run. It's interesting the comment that he made about, and you had mentioned it earlier. You know, maybe the system is one of the reasons why these guys are breaking down. I think people are going to be excited about this system, though, because of Anthony Davis, the way he fits into it.
Well, we just celebrated Back to the Future Day, right?
Yeah.
So let's go back 6 months here in the DeLorean and remember what we were talking about. Who stays out of both head coach and GM? Monty Williams, Dell Demps. Dell Demps won that battle. Dell Demps was building a roster that was made to play more up-tempo. So I don't think that a Tom Thibodeau, I don't think that a Jeff Van Gundy with his background, those guys would have fit what needed to be done. Now, is Alvin Gentry in the end the right guy? He hasn't been a big-time winner as a head coach. We don't know, but I think the style is the right fit, and that's going to help this team provided they can be healthy.
And Golden State won, as I mentioned earlier, more about their defense. Where you look at other teams that have run this style, didn't have, or not the defensive team that Golden State was last year as well. Glenn, any comment?
Well, I would have liked Van Gundy too, but not for the, you know, I'm not as aware of the strategic. But you know, the NBA, like the NFL, is a retread league. You know, these guys move all around the league, and Van Gundy was proven, and they already had this make good head coach, you know, who you never heard of. And so I would have liked Van Gundy for that reason. But strategically, you might be right.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you got to give this guy an opportunity. The question is, again, will they stay healthy? That was my biggest question mark going into this season. The rest of the West got better. Other teams went out. They went out, got free agents. They through the draft. They got better. The Pels chose to stand pat, hoping that they'd stay healthy and that the system would again get them from where they kind of went into the 8th seed and then hopefully maybe to get to the 6th seed. So we'll see what happens down the line here.
We had 2 teams fall back. Free agency decimated the Portland Trailblazers. Yes. They lost 4 starters, so they should fall out of the playoff picture. Dallas didn't get DeAndre Jordan. Of course, that fiasco in the talk time of free agency. The NBA needs to get rid of that. Why should you have to talk a week before you can make handshake deals? Reality, that was silly. But both of those teams look like they're not going to make the playoffs. There's some up-and-comers like Utah in particular, but that's 2 that fall off. But they had to make room for Oklahoma City with Kevin Durant healthy. I think that still has the Pelicans as a playoff team, provided they can, again, it all goes back to health. They should be okay there. It's a matter of who they're going to match up against, because that's going to tell everything as far as if they can advance a round or 2 this year. If they're able to win a playoff series this time, that's good enough progress, considering Anthony Davis is in it for at least the next half decade.
Yes. To the phone lines we go. 866-3200 to Tom in Metairie. Tom, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, Eric, I called a couple of weeks ago, and I was asking about LSU special teams, and your panel said, hey, LSU's going to fix it. Well, that was before South Carolina. And now we've had 2 run back on punts. So I'm going to see what this panel thinks about LSU special teams, and I'll hang up and listen to you.
Thank you, Tom. Glenn?
Well, they're still 127th out of 127 major colleges in punt return defense. They gave up a kick-off return against South Carolina, got that fixed against Florida, but then they gave up the punt return against Florida. It's really bad, considering the talent that LSU has, speed and depth. That's where you have on special teams is speed and depth, and so I got to think it's the scheme and the coaching if they're not getting their players to win in those situations, and they're 110th in the nation in kickoff return coverage, and I think they got the wrong guy returning kicks. Right. You know, so you know it's amazing. That's a bigger problem than quarterback. Who would have thought that? Back to the Future.
Oh yeah,
and really worse than or as bad as special teams is the secondary. They're 10th in the SEC in pass efficiency defense. they're usually not that low, not since Lou Tepper was the coach.
Yes.
So, they got some things that they need to fix up that we didn't really see coming going into the season.
As far as the special team goes, they made some subtle changes last week. Do you expect more changes going forward?
Well, they were good on kickoffs last week. I don't know if it's really going to be personnel. Les seemed happy with the people they had out there. He seemed a little more concerned with the scheme and how Bradley Dale Pivito is doing it. So if that doesn't get better, there might be some coaching changes. But I would think it's going to be scheme over player changes.
The specialists have been a major problem. Now, Pivito's a guy who was in the same role, if people remember back to 2005 to 2007, and if you look back on it, and they were good. They've got real issues with the punter, a 3-year starter, Jamie Keane, and they're going to redshirt the next Australian. So we're not going to see him. It's going to be Keane's job. And you see a guy who is so inconsistent with where he places the ball, how much hang time he has, how far he kicks it, and even directionally. So we don't know in the breakdown, because we're not in the film room, if the latest problem, a return against Florida, was that an issue with, it looked like he outkicked his coverage for one. I still think that you can see. Right, exactly. Because really, he's hit low liners and shanks half the time, and he's had luck with some rolls too. Yes. I think he's a big issue. We talked about kickoffs being improved against Florida from South Carolina. Right, Cameron Gamble clearly has the strongest leg of any of their specialists, and he'll see the end zone more. Best way to prevent returns is to not allow them to happen in the first place. I think Keane's a big, big problem, but at least we look at the big game coming up. We haven't talked about Alabama yet. They're struggling on special teams too. Their returners have fumbled 3 returns so far this year. They had a punt return for a touchdown against A&M last week. So at least LSU's weakness is their weakness, because you're going to start lining it up and figuring out how the game's going to be won and lost. LSU and Alabama have less than 3 weeks to figure it out.
Yeah, no doubt. Will, where do we go next? Let's go to Greg in Houma. Greg, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hello?
Greg, we got you now, buddy.
Hello?
Yeah, Greg, I got you, brother. Greg, we're going to move on, bud.
Hello?
Let's go to Brian in Metairie. Brian, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Guys, how y'all doing?
Hey, Brian.
Good to see y'all here.
Appreciate the phone call, my friend. What's
Hello?
up? We got you. Tell you what, we're going to cut the phone for a minute till we figure out what's going on back in Master Control. Let's get back to the Saints for a moment. You mentioned the defense. For the first time really this season, we saw a pass rush. We also saw the effect of Dannell Ellerbe. 14 total tackles, 13 solo tackles. Of course, he had a forced fumble and a recovered fumble. Devin Breaux, again, everybody is amazed on how quickly he has cleaned his act up. What Pro Football Focus had them, from an analytics standpoint, playing at a Pro Bowl level. You're seeing some guys come back from injuries. Obviously, Jarvis Byrd is not where you need him to be right now in terms of his range and playmaking ability, but the hope is he gets there. And we saw a little bit of a strategic move in terms of the schematics with, again, especially when they rushed the passer, with Jordan moving inside and them using more of that NASCAR package. Glenn, let me take you first. Your thoughts on the defense, your thoughts on how this team is playing.
Well, they really need Keenan Lewis back. I think he's been struggling.
It's
this
a sports
week.
hernia now, we understand today.
Yeah, so
and it could be a while.
Right. And Brandon Browner has really been getting picked on a lot. So they're in trouble there, I think, until Keenan comes back. But I like the pass rush. The Cam Jordan move was very good, and again that was game planning and coaching with some problems on the personnel side. They need Jarvis Byrd to play like they thought they were going to get when they signed him. So still a lot of question marks on defense, just like with offense.
It's funny. We've always talked over the years the Saints could get things right up front. They could get things right in the secondary, but linebacker was always a huge issue. Now with Stephon Anthony, Holy Kikaha, and Dannell Ellerbe, just a revelation about how well he can play when healthy. That was a Jeff Ireland connected move, and it is working out really well. Saints look really good at linebacker. They can compare with a lot of teams in the NFL. That will help, but Lewis is huge because it doesn't look like Browner is going to play well. He can't even cover tight ends when you ask him to one-on-one, and this is a guy that's been on championship teams as a starting corner. Don't know what's going on with him. We do remember he was injured in the first quarter of the first preseason game. Is he playing with something that isn't on the injury report but still affecting them? Those are the type of well, we know it's Sean Payton. Yes. We're never going to know that for sure. But it's tough because they look like they were going to have a real strength at cornerback this year. And injuries have really taken a chunk out of that. If it weren't for Breaux's development, they'd be in a whole lot of trouble.
In a lot of trouble. Now, Swan comes back for the concussion this week. He has played well in spots. It'll be interesting to see, again, if they try to fit him in more, because they got to find a place for Browner. You know, Browner has not played well, but they have not helped him out. He needs a pass rush to be effective.
I think any defensive secondary in the NFL needs a pass rush to be effective, and we saw a more effective Saints defense because of the success against Atlanta. Will that continue? Are they good enough? I don't know. But whatever they did to trigger Jordan and turn him into somebody who's not coming off the edge, who lacks that closing quickness, that ability, he was the king of almost through 5 games. He found his groove being more direct in line to get to the quarterback, not allow Brian, in this case, the ability to get away. If he can provide more of that, if you're pushing the pocket, even though you don't have speed on the edge, that will help a lot. And I think Kikaha's greatest strength is the fact that he can make inside moves and he can use that center of gravity he has. He's not a true edge rusher. He's more of a push the lineman into the quarterback's lap type of guy. That's how the Saints are going to have to get it done because that's what their personnel dictates.
Good draft picks. You know, finally.
Right. Question.
And so maybe there's some hope.
Was needed. I mean, again,
right.
you know, the reason why this team is struggling is because of the dearth of the drafts and honestly, free agency blowing up in their face. So we'll see what happens there. Before we go to LSU, I want to talk about these splash reports that are coming out every Sunday now. Last week it was Peyton interested in Miami and Indianapolis. This week it's USC interested in Peyton. I really don't see Peyton going to the college games. Some do, some don't. You know, at this point, Peyton really needs to focus on what's going on here in New Orleans. You know, last week on this show, Jeff Duncan mentioned that he believes that it's coming from the agent. I believe it's coming from the agent as well. You know, there's no team in the NFL that's going to tamper with a head coach. They can lose draft choices. They can get fined, etc. Jude, you think Sean Payton is here for the last 2 years of his deal?
I think Sean Payton is a businessman, and he understands that, hey, nothing is forever. We hear grumblings that the Saints are thinking about an extension with Brees to play out his career. If that happens, Peyton stays, because I think he likes the progress of a draft that finally looks like it's going to work out and provide some help. And salary cap hell, they're probably another year away of climbing out of that, but it looks like they might be able to compete through it when you look ahead to next year and maturing players. But there has to be at least some truth to it, because here's a guy who is a valuable commodity. He is the highest paid head coach in the NFL, and he deserves to be for his body of work with what he's done here. Maybe only Bill Belichick, you wonder how he's not making $1 more just to make $1 more, but Peyton's that good. I think you're right about college. That's not going to happen, but at the end of this season, depending on how it finishes up, Brees' health, Brees' interest in a continued rebuild, I think they're tied together at the hip. There's no other way to view it from my perspective anyway.
Well, maybe Belichick would be making more without all the fines and investigations. But I think Peyton, his decision is the grass is always greener somewhere else where I can start over. Coaches tend to like to start over.
No baggage.
In the NFL, no baggage. But is another place going to give him what he has in New Orleans, which is two things that are real important to him: power and ego. I mean, he doesn't have a boss, really, with the Saints. You know, if he went somewhere else, he might have a real GM. I think it'd be nice if he had a real GM with the Saints, which could have helped him with some of these bad decisions he made, like Spagnuolo and you know, some of the personnel decisions they made. Mark Ingram, Jean-Baptiste. You know, somebody. Hey, you know, if he'd have gotten along with Greg Williams, they might still be winning. You know, but he doesn't agree with that. So I think he's going to stay where he has the most power, and I do think he likes it here. So I think they're going to keep him.
And Peyton's not going to change that mindset as a Parcells disciple. His famous quote, Bill Parcells said, how do you expect me to cook if you don't let me shop for the groceries? Peyton's not going to give up that
But what's funny about that quote was Parcells really wasn't good at shopping for the groceries.
That's correct.
He was a coach, and it looks like the same thing with Peyton. I think Peyton's a great coach, but he's been a little 50-50 with personnel.
Imagine those phone calls, though, between Bill and Sean. I bet you a lot of it, well, it wasn't my fault. I had the right idea. Those guys believe they're always right.
You know, guys, again, it's a little easier for him if he goes elsewhere. He's the Super Bowl winning coach, the guy that turned the New Orleans Saints into winners. There's no baggage. He stays here. Again, for the first time ever, he's getting criticism here in this town. Criticism of the fan base, criticism from the media. And people are taking a look at the warts now because, again, you're in a situation where you maybe let a team that should have maybe won another Super Bowl, maybe should have been in the mix a little bit longer, you let it kind of slip. And the problem with that is, again, when you have no one over you that can ultimately say, look, you're not focusing as much as you should. You're not making good decisions. Well, when the guy that's in charge isn't as focused and doing what he needs to do, things slip. And in my opinion, that's what's happened with this team right now.
Yeah, but the other thing is, though, he is getting criticism here, but still, criticism in New Orleans is still not as bad as criticism in other cities. And that's another thing he has going for him, because it's not really a huge media city. There's some great media here, and we're all three part of that, right?
Right.
But I mean, it's still not, like you're in Dallas or Philadelphia or something like that.
No, it's true. Let's shift gears to the Tigers again. 6-0, Florida, big win, 35-28. Glenn, we'll start with you first. First of all, in the polls itself, highest-ranked SEC team, I look in front of them and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, I know they haven't hit that November schedule yet, but, just if being the top SEC team, I think they should be a little higher ranked.
Sure, it's amazing. I mean, in the just the recent past, if you're the only undefeated team in the SEC, you're probably first or second, or third, maybe. So yeah, they're only fifth. It's kind of funny, and they have a great player in Leonard Fournette. Brandon Harris is developing nicely. I mean, you couldn't really hope for a better season than what LSU's doing. And the other SEC teams look good, but they don't look perfect either.
Yes.
Alabama's, their quarterback's throwing a lot of interceptions. Looks like they might even be going back to the running game a little bit more, which with Derrick Henry, which I think if they'd have ran Henry more, they might have beat Ohio State in the Superdome here. But that's going to be just like the old days, 5 years ago. That's going to be the Super Bowl, November 7th.
Yes.
Yeah, I think LSU ought to be ranked a little higher, but they'll eventually get there if they keep winning.
Is that because they got purple and gold glasses on that I'm saying that, or do you think they should be ranked higher?
Well, it might be because, hey, this is our market. We're looking at LSU. We're very much focused on the SEC. The teams in front of them, Ohio State's a defending national champion. They're as talented as anybody. As long as they keep winning, they belong there. Utah started their season with a big win, which became a big win. Didn't know it at the time, but a big win over Michigan, and then they destroyed Oregon. Although they've been struggling, you go to Oregon and you win by 42 points, you're going to grab some attention from people. Baylor scoring 50-plus points on everybody, and they started ranked ahead of LSU, and there's no reason to move them back. So when you start throwing that out there, a Clemson being right there, marquee win over Notre Dame in a game that a lot of people watched, it doesn't matter right now because, like you said, November is the gauntlet. It just starts with Alabama.
And really,
LSU
the only good team LSU's really beaten is Florida.
Right,
yes,
correct.
Agreed. I agree with that. Guys, let's talk what maybe the problem area right now, at least for last week, was against Florida. For the first time in a long time, I think a lot of the question what was going on with the secondary. They didn't play well. And again, that's almost been a given with this team, the secondary is going to play well. Glenn, what did you see?
Well, they have a lot of talent back there, and they have experience. And really, last week was nothing new. They've been giving up touchdown passes in the second half to third and fifth string quarterbacks from Syracuse and what have you. So, new defensive coordinator who's a little more active in all positions, more so than John Chavis was. Steele is a little in all the positions, and they're just, they're not aligned right. I think they have some scheme problems with these defensive linemen trying to drop into coverage sometimes. The front four, to me, is playing well, and the linebackers are playing well, but they need to get on that secondary or Lane Kiffin's going to chew them up.
I've seen a team that's changed on the fly here, and the difference between Kevin Steele and John Chavis. I think Chavis's great success is give me great athletes, I'm going to put a simple scheme out there, and we're going to go after it. The defensive line, though, with Ed Ogeron's influence, you're seeing many more twists and stunts and putting guys in position to confuse offensive linemen and create havoc. And they're playing very well up front against the run and the pass, so they're not losing integrity stopping the run by being more aggressive and moving around more. But we're also seeing a defense that's playing a lot more zone than I've seen and playing more of that pro-style backup, second-level linebacker, and guys have made mistakes. And Jim McElwain's proving that he's a legitimate big-time offensive coach, and he's going to take Florida places, I do believe, if the issues off the field that he's inherited don't bring him down. He was able to get matchups, wheel routes to the tight end, and some confusion for LSU. Having seen previous film, the Tigers have flat out blown some zone coverages, and they've got to clean that up because they want to play zone and try to prevent the big play against Alabama and make the Tide prove they can drive the football down the field. And when you mention Lane Kiffin, He's not a patient guy. There's going to be a bit of a tug-of-war there with him and Nick Saban. They're starting to run the ball more, but he doesn't like to stay patient. If they're not getting 4 and 5 yards a carry against LSU, he might look to take some shots, and I think that's what LSU wants them to do, but they have to take advantage of that.
Well, man-to-man defense is why LSU's defense has been so good going back to the early 2000s under Saban, under Pelini, and under Chavis, because that just frees you up so much with what you can do with the other 9 guys or the linemen and the linebackers, and I think they need to get back to that because it's just more natural. Why did they go away from it?
Why did they go away from it? I mean, they got the athletes. I mean, Tolliver comes in automatically. He goes one-on-one on the outside with maybe the opponent's best receiver, and he's shutting them down. All of a sudden, I'm seeing him in the zone last week, or maybe playing on the inside. I'm thinking to myself, what is he doing there?
Yeah, because I mean, it's obvious. It's easier. When you're a young DB and you just used to talent to play man-to-man, and that's what they're used to at LSU. So that's a curious change. And Steele has not, he was at Alabama, but he's at other places where they probably needed to play zone, like Clemson and Baylor. So I would think that might be something to do with it, but definitely needs to go back to the man.
Right. Usually one player isn't the end-all, be-all to be a fix, but Jalen Mills played more in the second half against Florida once LSU started cutting down on those issues in coverage. He is huge because he can play any spot in the secondary, any safety spot in the slot.
And he's a coach out there.
I mean, how often does LSU have a guy who's going to play on Sundays who's a senior defensive back? It's awfully rare. Dwayne Thomas struggled one-on-one in coverage. Ricky Jefferson at times. I remember one touchdown against South Carolina. He got caught having to play
quite a few times.
Right. Yeah, he's having issues the last couple of games with his physicality coming up in the box, but he's certainly not a guy you want to have to deal if you're LSU with one-on-one coverage. Having Mills back who can play the slot, who knows where he's supposed to be, as you say, a quarterback on the defense who can direct players around, that'll help. Tolliver's really good, but he's still a true freshman, and you have to protect him to some extent, and not having Mills out there made that more difficult because you had more inexperienced guys and guys with more warts than you're used to seeing it at DBU, as they like to call themselves.
Louis Neal, you've watched him at LSU since he's been there, and it's almost like you're saying to yourself, where's this guy been? Is it the scheme? What is it? Because he's emerged. He's going to be a first-round pick.
And looking at him, he doesn't look big, or rangy like a Mingo or even a Sam Montgomery. But I just think Ed Orgeron has had a major impact. Lewis had chances last year, didn't play as well. They look really good on the defensive line. They probably could get a few more sacks with the speed they have, but that's been a strong point. And the switch from Chavis to Steele. If Chavis was still there, they might be better on defense overall. But if Chavis was still there, they might not have Orgeron.
Yeah, good point.
I don't think Chavis ever really wanted to work with him.
Right.
Same thing before.
And he's been a real asset, hasn't he?
No, there's no question. Not only is he a great recruiter, and he brings that energy that you like to have up front. I know he's very different in that respect from Brick Haley, who moved on to A&M. He's just the type of guy that kids listen to. He keeps it simple, but he knows how to teach, and he's done it every stop, and that's helped these guys a lot. And back to Neal, they were playing him inside last year. Now they've got him on the edge, and I look at a guy that you say he's not that big. He reminds me of a Robert Mathis, who not now like we'll see on Sunday with the Colts, but a guy who was that complement on the opposite side to a speed rusher. In this case, Arden Key. We're talking about Dwight Freeney, though, one of the elites of the game. Just a guy who can hold the edge, but also is a deceptively good pass rusher. It seems like he gets great leverage. He gets under the lineman and is able to get around them easier than you'd think just looking at him. But that also is technique, knowing how to use your leverage. And I think that's where Orgeron's made a big impact.
He had 3 sacks last week, and he really could have had 7. And he had three hurries. But a little bit of luck, he might have been up there at 7. So it'll be interesting to see, because this quarterback at Western Kentucky is going to throw almost every down.
Right, so. and he can throw the ball.
Oh, yeah, Dowdy, yes.
Okay, he can throw the football. The secondary will be tested this week.
Sure.
Now, it'll be, again, and unlike Eastern Michigan, I don't think you can play down to the competition this week.
Oh,
this is
no
not
way.
a great ball club, but this is a pretty good ball club.
They'll score with you. If you're sloppy on offense and having 3 and outs on those drops like we saw at Eastern Michigan and you're punting away, you don't want to get into a possession game where if you don't have enough possessions, they just might outscore you. But on the plus side, this is really good practice because I assume that Brandon Harris with his development and Leonard Fournette, he's going to show up and play ball. They're going to score points. This is another good test for the pass defense because Western Kentucky, this is their marquee opportunity to throw the kitchen sink at LSU at what might be a weakness and maybe shock the country. This will help get LSU ready for Alabama because Lane Kiffin's going to try to come up with wrinkles. Maybe they'll be out of wrinkles because LSU was challenged enough by, when you look at, I thought Syracuse had a very good game plan with a limited quarterback. Certainly we mentioned McElwain with Florida, and now Western Kentucky that certainly knows how to attack and you take advantage of all those little college rules to be a spread team and throw it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Glenn, talk about the maturity of Brandon Harris. I think a lot of us thought coming out of high school that he really, that he had the background in high school to be able to play in the major college level, but he really didn't. And I think a lot of us didn't realize that. But now he seems to have been a little bit more comfortable now with what's going on.
Well, I think as poorly as they coached quarterbacks last year at LSU, I think Cam Cameron is doing an excellent job with Brandon. They're giving him baby steps, kind of bringing him along slow, and it helps have Leonard Fournette and really probably the best offensive line in the country. So he's not really asked to win the game, but he's come up in some pretty key situations. At Syracuse, hit a late touchdown. He converted some big third downs against South Carolina and Florida. He throws a nice pass. I mean, he has had no turnovers. The interception that he was ruled with, they turned that into a fumble. So he's up there in passing efficiency. He's about 7th in the SEC, which is much higher than Jennings ever was, or really Jefferson. So he's making progress, and I think he's getting to where he's an asset, not a negative. He's in about the middle right now, but I think with Fournette he can really become a dangerous weapon.
Yes.
Cameron's really brought him along so well, and I can't remember one time this season, having watched every snap of every game, where that was a real mistake. He shouldn't have made that throw. That's why he doesn't have any interceptions. And he's a guy who can make every throw. Sometimes he's inaccurate, but he tends to put the ball where only his receiver should be able to catch it, and he's come along and thrown more and more these last 3 weeks. He's going to have to make the type of plays and big throws that he did against Florida if LSU is going to win at Alabama. And you can walk away from that Florida game feeling like that he's capable of doing it even though it's on the road. They're not going to put him in situations unless LSU's desperate and being beaten in other areas where Harris is going to beat them. And when you have number 7, the defense always has to worry about him first, and that makes a quarterback's job a lot easier.
Well, a great segue into number 7. They've held him back a little bit. Coming in November, I got to believe they're going to let him loose. Your thoughts?
He's just a great player. I mean, it seemed like Florida did a decent job on him early, and he finishes with 180 yards. I wish they'd passed to him a little bit more in the flat, which is how they really used Dalton Hilliard back when he was with LSU and the Saints. Different size back, but still Leonard in the open field. I'd like to see that, but he doesn't need a lot to get away from the line of scrimmage, and he's got a great offensive line, and I've never seen a guy, I mean, there's been a lot of great backs over the years, but I've never seen a guy where every game you see 2 or 3 guys who obviously don't want to tackle him.
Yes.
He basically had a police escort against South Carolina. I kept waiting for the guy to try to tackle him. He had the angle, he never did.
Never did it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, you saw the Auburn guy fly over his head. He's already had some Heisman signature moments already, and I think there's more to come.
Yeah, no doubt. Jude Young, Glenn Guilbeau, thanks so much for being with us tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports. Really, really great panel tonight. Also, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night at 10 p.m. right here on WLE and on Pelican Sports Television in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets at 9 p.m. You can catch me on the radio, 990 AM WGSO, weekdays 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. Also, you can check us out on the TuneIn Radio app as well as ericasher.com. And don't forget, every single Monday night, we're live at Legacy Kitchen in the Warehouse District, 700 Chopper Tools, myself, and Saints Hall of Famer Tyrone Hughes at 7 to 8 at Legacy Kitchen and on WGSO Radio. We're talking Saints, LSU, and Tulane. Again, special thanks to our guests, Jude Young and Glenn Guilbeau. Also to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Philip Williamson, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll catch you right back here next Thursday here on WLAE. Have a great evening.
New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.